So great to have you here, Rael. I would love to hear your story on how you started Butn and all. And so let's start with, how did you come up with the idea and the cool name Butn?
Look, thank you for having us, obviously, and welcome to Butn headquarters down in Melbourne, Australia. I think a couple of things. We've heard it all before. Butn, 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 and for us it was really an evolution. We were trying to figure out, where do businesses' data get stored? Where's all businesses' data kept? And where that data is kept, can we access it? And can we access the data in real time? And if we can access the data in real time, how will we get access to that data? That was always our question. And then it came to me. Why don't we put a button on the system? And somebody clicks a button, we get the data in real time, and then we can send them back money in real time. And Butn, that's what we do. We're a B2B financier, we're a transactional funder. We charge fixed fee per transaction, so no lock-ins, no minimums, maximum interest rates, none of this stuff. But our, call to market is what we say, funding at the click
of a button. I love that. Right. And so what was your background? Like, were you already in finance? I mean, at first I was hearing data. I had no idea about that because I see it as a complete finance business. But yeah, how did data get to do with finance, and do you have a background in finance? Yeah.
So we've been doing this for probably near on 8 years, probably over 8 years. And we're always in the finance game, doing invoice finance, trade finance, lending, funding, it's been called many things. But for us, it was always the issue of, how do we get mass distribution? How do we scale this business? And I think a lot of people are finding the same thing. The days of knocking on doors are well and truly over. How many doors can you knock on in a day? Maybe 4, maybe 5. Then you go for lunch, then you go back to the office and you type it up. You can't get distribution, you never get growth like that. So what we decided is there must be a way where we get mass distribution, where we said before, we get access to data, so we can make faster decisions, better credit decisioning, that allow us to fund in a shorter amount of time to better clients, to better credit, and without knocking on 1,000 doors. So when we had this existing business and we used to knock on the 1,000 doors, then we decided, well, we don't want to knock on doors anymore. Where else do businesses live? Where are they sitting? Are they sitting in CRM systems? Are they sitting in marketplaces? Are they sitting in any other third-party software? And that's when we said, if there's businesses that sit in third-party software, there must be a way to access those businesses and offer those businesses finance without going directly to the business, but going via the third party. And that's how really the genesis of Butn started back in the day, when we realized we're already in the lending game, but we just want to solve for distribution. So we knew what we were doing, we knew how to write credit, we knew how to build the business, but we didn't understand where to get that distribution. And then when we built the technology of Butn, and we realized that it plugs into these third-party software, this third-party distribution, it really was, a game changer for us that allowed us to take the software, take the third party, plug it in together, overlay our funding mechanisms, overlay our crediting decisioning, and then be able to distribute all our funding products through those third parties.
Genius, because I just remembered now, it was like a software like MYOB, and you guys integrated in that, and explain a little bit more.
Correct. So MYOB is one of our partners. We have many partners across the board. Obviously, MYOB being one of the biggest, and we realised that all the data, again, as we said before, the data is kept on these third-party platforms, on the marketplaces for guys buying and selling through a marketplace, and his business and his wholesaling. How's he funding that purchase? Is he getting off that platform? Is he going on Google? Is he calling his broker? Is he calling the bank? Is he calling his mate? Do you know anyone financing? And we thought, well, we should be able to hit them at the point of transaction, so they don't have to leave the platform, they don't have to leave the ecosystem, they can stay within that existing ecosystem. And how do we get them to stay within that ecosystem? We offer them finance at the point of transaction. And if we can offer them the point of transaction, how do we do it? Well, then again, we go back to what we said before. We realize that within that ecosystem, there's data. No one's utilizing that data. We'll utilize that data, we'll capture that data, and there has to be an opt-in. And when the opt-in is when they click the button.
Nice.
And that's really sort of how it sort of really comes together as a full circle. So when someone clicks a button, access to data, access to credit decisioning, money flows back in, goods are paid, money comes back out to Butn. So it's really just
very
seamless,
Yeah.
no touch points, 10-minute registration, and continues to go around and around. And I think that's, if we look at it sort of broadly across the board, what I think a lot of businesses are trying to solve for, or struggled to solve for, is that seamless onboarding, that seamless integration. It doesn't matter whether you're selling bananas at a fruit shop, or bananas online, or whether you're selling widgets to overseas. If it takes elongated time, you're going to lose the sale. If it's not an easy process, you're going to lose the sale. We've seen a lot of businesses now that build these wonderful products, right? The best product out there, whether it's a technology product or a financial product or an actual widget. And once they built this product, then they go out and sell it. They're like, I've got this great product, I'm going to make millions of dollars, I'm going to go out and sell it. And 3 months later, they realize no one's buying, because they've built a product that they think's great, but they haven't tested it. We did it exactly the opposite. We went out to market and we said to the market, we're going to build a product. What do you think? We'd like it that way. We'd like it that way. We'd like it that color. We are great. We took that feedback. We went in and we built it. Then we went back out again and say, what does everyone think? Do you like it? No, it should be like this. The flow should be like this. It should be quicker, more seamless. And eventually, when we finished our product build, we knew exactly what everyone wanted, because we built it with everybody in mind. We didn't build a product to go and sell. We built a product that had been pre-sold.
That is golden tip right there. I wish I knew that when I first started my business. And actually, I failed many times because I still didn't follow that rule. So talking about that startup phase, what were some of the challenges that you faced? And I know you're now at the scaling up. Would love to hear some of your journey.
So I think, again, we were just discussing this offline before, that a lot of people refer to themselves as a startup. 5 years in, 10 years in, they're still a startup. And the next phase after the startup is scale up. And a lot of people that are really in the scale up phase are still using the term startup. And I think there's a miscommunication there, and there is a big differentiator. And from what I understand these days, especially over the journey over the last 8 years, is that in the startup phase, you're really trying to define the product. What's the product like? Is there a product fit? Is there a product mix, etc.? That's the startup. Once you've solved that, then you're ready into scale-up phase. If you're mid-scale-up and you're still trying to run like a startup, when you're trying to solve for the product, you'll never scale. You'll always be in a startup. So you can think like a startup, but you never want to be a startup until you solve that product. As soon as you solve that product, pivot directly into a scale-up mode.
So what were some of the things you faced during the startup phase?
So look, I think, it's going back a couple of years now, but some of the main sort of, I think, takeaways that we learned, offshoring, which I'm sure you're quite familiar with. We had everything onshore. We built everything onshore. We wanted the security. We wanted the comfort. I think the market's significantly changed since we started back in the day, and I think the opportunity to now take a lot of work offshore and not be slugged with such heavy costs in the beginning, especially in the startup phase, is a real opportunity that I think, in hindsight, we could have taken more advantage of. I think also some of the things from sort of the startup phase is, again, we touched on the product fit, really building a product for someone, as opposed to building a product you think is the greatest thing in the world and then taking it to market and realize no one wants it. We've seen that recently in the last couple of years. A lot of businesses fall over. They raise big money, then realize there's no real product fit and fall over. And I think some of the other things also is that in the startup phase, people always think they need to raise money. They need to raise thousands, millions of dollars. I need money, money, money. But when you actually peel back the layers and really look at it, a lot of that money either gets wasted or it goes on wages. I get this CEO, that CEO, this CFO, this, we bootstrapped our business. So we didn't raise a cent. We're now a publicly listed company. We went through pre-IPO and post IPO. Up until that pre-IPO point, we never raised a cent. We raised debt because we're a lending company. We wanted to lend out money, but we didn't raise 1 cent of equity. And I think we're in a very fortunate position that when we did list, myself and my co-founder owned 50-50 of the business, which is basically an unheard of thing in this industry. People couldn't believe it when we went on the show. You know, people thought, oh, we must have raised Series A, B, C, D. And we realized that you can bootstrap in the beginning and, you know, what do they say? Like, you know, eat rice before you eat lobster or something, you know, or eat rice before you eat falafel or something, you know. And you don't need to go out and raise those millions. And we, you know, people that come to us that ask, I always counsel them, try not to raise. Try to bootstrap as long as you can until you really need to raise.
You need the real business lessons that you need to go through yourself.
Correct, exactly right. You know, like they always say you can surround yourself with everyone, but at the end of the day, the buck stops with you. You know, so unless you've really done all the bits and pieces, you'll never be able to really fully appreciate the full end-to-end of the business cycle, especially the business that you're trying to build.
That's amazing. So touching on offshoring, like, what were some of your perception of offshoring that made you go, nah, it's put in the too hard basket? And then what was the turning point? You know what? I think I really need to explore it.
Yeah, look, I'd run businesses overseas before, in the Philippines as well, actually. And I used to travel there every month. And I knew the headaches involved, you know, going back and forth and the time involved, etc. And unless there's somebody on the ground that can sort of really take care of it for you, you're sort of one step behind. And that was, I guess, part of that fear, saying, look, I've been there, done that. I don't want to be traveling every week or every month. I need someone there on the ground. And this was sort of 3-4 years ago already. So I think the market, again, has somewhat matured in the last 3 to 4 years, which is, I guess, why part of the reason why we're having this conversation. But I think also back then there was a preconceived notion that onshore, you'll never get as good as smarts offshore as you would at onshore. But what I think we're seeing now is a lot of the smarts that are coming in are, if not equal, thereabouts on that same level, with that same idea, the same mentality, the same drive, which is a very interesting change, especially what we've seen over the last sort of 4 or 5 years across that industry.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I noticed as well is, like, even if I hire someone local, I still need to find the right one, because you could still find a dud. You still need to train them, and if you don't train them well, onboard them, then they could still not have that chance. So as a leader, you know, you've grown teams. Like, what have you learned when it comes to whether you're training offshore teams or local? Like, what are the similarities and what are the differences? Yeah.
Look, I think one of the age-old sayings is always hire slow, fire fast. The problem is 98% of people hire fast and fire slow, and that's where you get into trouble. And I know we've been guilty of that in the past as well, because you get into that rut. You don't want the, like you said, the unknown of trying to hire again and going through that process again and trying to solve again. So I think some of the things that we've sort of, I guess, experienced and learned over that process is, actually, I'll tell you something else. Someone that said something very interesting to me a while ago. We were trying to recruit for a role, and we were trying to recruit a mirror of the person that has just left. And we couldn't find anyone. We're looking for 6 months. And then someone said to me, you don't need to hire somebody that was 100% of the previous. You don't need to hire someone that was 90% of the previous or 80%. Hire someone that was 70% of the previous and bring them up to 100%.
Yeah.
And that was a real change of mindset for us, you know, because we wanted, we wanted someone that knows everything, hit the ground running, don't have to train them, etc., etc. But there's only one of everyone.
Yeah.
There's not two of everyone. And that, I think, is a...
And that person would have been with you already for X amount of time.
Exactly right, exactly right. So for us, that was like, oh, that's interesting. So we changed our expectations to hire someone that's good at that would be good in the role, that can bring them up, as opposed to trying to find someone that's already up the top. And I think, you know, that was a very important lesson for us, and allowed us to really open up our talent pool. And we've, again, when we've sort of taken that role, we've taken that offshore as well with the same mentality.
Yeah.
So they might not be 100% what we're looking for, but if they're 60 or 70 and they can move, we'll make that decision. And if they can't move, fire fast, fill that role and do the same again.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's really about the culture fit, right? You meet someone that's more of has the right attitude, and you can see that you can train and, you know, nurture them to the way you want them to be. So have you found that even if you're working with offshore teams, people from, you know, located from Sydney versus Melbourne, are you still able to maintain the culture despite the distance?
Yeah, look, I think I definitely there is a challenge there. I think we saw during COVID, there's only really so much you could do on Teams and Zoom and etc. But I think it depends on how closely aligned the teams are. So if they really are remote, and this is your task, 9 to 5 or whatever the timings are, this is your task, do it, send it back to me at the end of the day, tomorrow I'll send you a new task, then it's fully outsourced, then it's fully remote and separate. I think if there's a real integration of teams, like I know some of my guys, or some of my friends actually, they run teams offshore. They fly them in, every 6 months and make them part of the team, etc. I think that's the other extreme, where there is a middle ground. But I think what we found is it depends what works at the time, at the team, for the task as well. So if it's a inverted commas, a mundane task, you don't need to fly them in. This is your task. It's the end of the day. Send it back to me and follow through. Yeah. And if it's the opposite, where it's really intricate and it's a complicated structure and it's complicated work, that's when I think the integration. And we've flown people overseas and back in New Zealand and Philippines and Thailand, etc.
Yeah.
So.
What are some of your favourite tools that you use to work with your team?
Technical or?
Yeah, like digital, must-have tools that you use to work with.
So, I mean, look, we're pretty mainstream. We use the Jira boards and the Mira and the Slack. Teams, we use Teams internal. Email. WhatsApp, but I think what we found is whatever works at the time. So if it's the middle of the night, no one's going to get the Slack. They'll get the WhatsApp. If there's something that needs
if it's urgent, I guess.
If it's urgent, or if something that needs to be actioned first thing in the morning, and someone's doing taking their kids to school, they're not checking their computer, they're not checking their WhatsApp. Someone's going to give them a call. So I think it's really horses for courses. But I also think that the technology, even working with remote teams and offshores, etc., has really shrunk that world, that they can feel part of that team, whether it's via Slack or the WhatsApp groups, etc., that they are amenable to it at any point in time, whether it is 5 o'clock here and 7 o'clock there, etc. If there's things going on and they want to be a part of it, those are the tools that really can enable that sort of thing.
So you have your VAs work under your team member Mark Newstead. Like, how does your structure work? Like, so you're always CEO. How does your
sure role? We've always run a very flat structure. So when I started the business with my co-founder, what we did was we used to do everything. Right, it was just the two of us.
Typical, yeah.
As any founder would do, which is why it's so important to bootstrap in the beginning. But so the fact that we did everything, so then when we brought on more people, we wanted those people to be able to do everything, and then the other people we brought on, we wanted them to do everything. So eventually, everyone can do everything, but it's a very flat structure, right? When we listed, things changed. The idea, though, is that I'll still take out the rubbish, because I don't care. Everyone can do everything. No one's above or beyond anyone else, sort of thing. So from our point of view, it's very important that if somebody's away, somebody can step in, so Mark's our COO. He runs operations across the whole business, across all our platforms and all our products, which is very important for him to be across everything, which is why Mark is the point for our offshore, etc. But having said that, we've got guys that work with Mark that can also step into Mark's role, that can step into the other roles, that can really sit across the whole business, that can deal with offshore teams, etc. as well. So I think also it's very important that people get fixated on, titles and structures and, I report to this one and this manager and this state manager. We have that loosely defined, but everyone takes out the rubbish, everyone makes coffees, everyone does everything when something needs to be done, and I think that's also, that comes also to the culture. That no one's better than anybody, no one knows more than anybody, no one has a monopoly of wisdom. We learn from each other, we take from each other, and I think that's sort of allowed us to sort of get where we are today. I mean, if we look back the last 8 years, we've probably done, I don't know, over $1.5 billion of funding, and you know, low losses and good business and good revenues, sort of thing. So that's a huge testament to the team and the team that we've built and the culture and the structure that we strive to put in place.
I love that you pass it on to the next person, but you're so mindful that you don't want them to be stressed out and, you know, burn out. And so you're getting the support for them to be able to, you know, support you in that sense.
Correct. Which is why, again, we look to offshore to supplement the team. You know, we didn't need somebody in the office 24/7. That wasn't sort of the mindset we needed. We needed to fill some gaps. And at the time, and still is now, that those gaps were well filled by sort of offshoring, and you know, we continue to explore those opportunities and continue to fill those gaps if and when they need.
Awesome. Well, final question. I know I can sit here all day talking to you because I love business like you. How are you as a leader now? Like, compare yourself when you first started, describe yourself as a leader, and how are you like now? What's your typical day look like as a leader?
Yeah, a leader. That's a good question. I don't see myself as a leader, and I'll tell you why. Because I see myself more as I want to use the word storyteller, you know, because I've been there, done that. I've done everything in this business from day one, right? And we run, like we said, we run a very flat structure. I don't want to lead anyone. I want everyone to be independent. I don't want people to come to me. I want people to make their own decisions, right? And if there's a major decision that needs to be made, we're happy to have that conversation. But I want that independence. So what's my role now? My role is, you know, we're a public company now. My role is to get people to understand what we do, how we do it, let people come along on the journey, say this is what we've done, this is what we've built, this is where we are today, this is where we want to be tomorrow, this is where we want to be in 3 years, this is where we want to be in 5 years, this is how I think we're going to get there, this is the partnerships that we're doing, these are the partnerships that we have in train, you know. So we definitely lead from the top, you know, but we don't profess to think that we have the monopoly of wisdom, you know. And I think if you get buy-in from investors and shareholders and team members, and you can really build that story around what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve, and why we're trying to achieve it, but the other guys are sort of bang their chest and say, I'm the boss, I'm the leader, you do that, you do that. You know, you'll see that at the end of the day, the team will crumble. There'll be riots in the office, etc. You know, because people want to feel valued. You know, and the way to feel valued is to really bring them along that journey.
That's inspiring. Really like that as a storyteller, telling the story of directions and all. I actually have one more question. So you mentioned when I came to the office, is your son is selling, you know, some hoodies, and you're teaching him how to be an entrepreneur. So if he was sitting here right now and you had to give him, you know, hey son, the last word of advice about his journey into manhood or as a business leader eventually, like what would you say to him?
Don't do it. No. I have to say one thing though. I have 2 daughters.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So if they ever watch this, I'm going to get in trouble. So I have 2 daughters, which is even better, I think, because it's empowering the next generation. You know, and there's a lot of you know, female empowerment and female business and all this stuff. And I think it's really important, you know. Business has always been in the family. We grew up around business. And the younger generation don't have, I think, the appreciation that we had. I mean, we grew up around the dinner table. It was always business, business, business. What's the price doing? What's the market doing? What's the housing? You know, it was always that sort of thing. And now, you know, you sit around the dinner table and it's iPads and iPhones and, oh, do you watch that TikTok? And, you know, do you see that dance and all that? And I'm thinking, you know, this is chalk and cheese to what we grew up with. So, so you're right. So I try to, you know, literally where we are, set up a stall on a Sunday, selling orange juice, and say, this is how it is. This is how you make money. This is how the prices work. You got to go and pick the oranges, and then you got to juice them, and then you got to make them, and you know. So it's that. I think it's that appreciation of where they come from, and also where they need to get to if they really want to sort of follow this path. I don't think everyone's made for business, to tell you the truth. People think, I want to go business, this is going to open up my life, this is going to change my life, and it's going to change money, etc. If you do it for the money, it's never going to work. You've got to do it for the love of business. That's my big belief. People chase money, but if you chase the business, the money will come. If you chase the money, the business will not come. And once you're in a business, if you're only in it for the money and the money's not there, within 6 months you're going to drop off.
That's
if you're in it for the business, and most startups 3-5 years, there's no money. You know, that's, unless you're Butn. So what I would say to my kids now is, if you want to do it, but make sure you know what you're getting into. You know, it's not for the faint-hearted. You want to dip your toe in the water, fine. You want to put you want to go swimming, fine. But once you're swimming, you got to go the full length of the pool. Don't stop halfway, because that halfway is, oh, there's no money in this, it's not fun anymore. Sleepless nights, working weekends, working 20 hours a day. I mean, that's what we've all done back in the day, you know, and still do, you know. But if you want to do it, you got to be all in. You know, there's no half-baked things. You know, you're not going to eat a loaf of bread that's half-baked. You know, you'll eat the crust, you'll eat the bottom, maybe the ends, and you'll leave the middle. And if that's an analogy for business, you'll enter the business, you'll do a little bit on the top, a little bit on the bottom.
Continuous.
The continuous thing, and then you get to the middle and you're like, this is all too hard, I'm out. Don't even start, go get a job. You know?
And finding a job nowadays, as long as it's flexible and, you know, something you love, it's probably a good idea.
Look, I can tell you, there's a lot of guys out there, a lot of girls out there, women, you know, whoever it is, making unbelievable money in a 9-to-5 job. No weekends, switching off on Fridays, not up, 3 in the morning, jotting down notes, thinking, I've got to do that, I've got to do that, I've got to do that, you know. So the horses for courses, you know. If you want to go down that path and you don't want to sort of, holiday for 10 years of your life, great, go and do it, but know what you're getting into. And if you want to get the 9-to-5 with the flexibility, you can still do really, really well in that. And there's plenty of people that do it, but it's definitely a mentality thing.
Well, thank you, Daddy. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed our conversation, and thank you for being an amazing client as well.
No, thank you, and thank you for all your efforts. Thank you so much.